there's some major questions before we move to UCLA that are being asked amongst Husky Nation. And I think the biggest one that we're staring right now from Husky Nation is the Damon Will Rogers one.
For us on defense is going to depend upon edge play and containing the outside run, because now the groundwork is laid. All right, dog fans, before we hop into the show, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out, and we appreciate the support. Thanks to our sponsor, Simply Seattle, we'll be picking out one lucky new subscriber to win free Washington Huskies t-shirt and hat. To enter, just subscribe, drop a comment below letting us know that you've done it. You can be out there flexing that new Husky drip, that new Husky swag in no time. Plus, don't forget to check out Simply Seattle's QR code at the bottom of the screen, which will take you directly to their website for all your Washington Husky apparel needs. Good luck. Go Dogs. Thank you for everything.
We're reeling from a butt whooping in Happy Valley, but we're back looking at UCLA and hopefully getting a bowl berth. I got my guys Izzo and Noah with me. Fellas, I know it was a very, very painful weekend. At least it was for me. What are your thoughts on the Dogs' trip to Happy Valley? It definitely did not go as we were hoping.
The first thing is that the Valley was not very happy that night. There's nothing happy about that Valley. Yeah. I mean, if I could summarize this game, I would say it was the disciplined versus the undisciplined. I really thought Penn State took advantage of every opportunity they had, and there were so many opportunities that UW and not maybe like these like unbelievably like plays that we missed on. We just didn't make any plays to put us in really any form or fashion in any like close proximity of winning that game.
Yeah.
I mean, it all kind of started up front. That defensive line they're the truth, man. That number 11, Abdul Carter, is going to be a problem at this level, at the next level, whatever level he wants to play. That kid is an absolute game wrecker. And you really saw some of our boys get absolutely baptized in that game. Khalil Tafai, dude, I still think you can be a player, big fella, but man, welcome to the show. Don't cut that, Izzo, because he needs to hear it. I mean, I think he graded out in pass blocking at a 0.
Oh, wow.
So it's one of those games where, you know what, man, for real, welcome to the show. You know, you lose that Dixon early on in that game on by the rule, by the definition, targeting.
Yeah, I thought it was ticky-tack.
Maybe, yeah, ticky-tack as hell. But then you get a guy like, you see some, some fire in there and Leroy Bryant. I don't know if you guys noticed the big number 0 out there, kind of. But I mean, he got baptized a little bit too, but not in the sense of like he shouldn't be there. It's just very first game you get considerable time in, and
he got attacked. He literally got attacked in the passing game,
and so which is good coaching, man. But at the end of the day, dude, you got to take advantage of your opportunities. And what do you guys always hear me say? It starts up front, and the game's always won and lost in the battle of the trenches.
You can't. It's tough. Like I know, I think we were hoping for a spark from Damon when we switched to him, but 5 sacks up to that point. I'm just going to read you some of my notes. I typically won't go straight from the notes like this, but I just want to rattle through a few things that kind of summarize the main takeaways for why we lost that game. We got into the red zone 3 times, scored twice on 2 field goals. Key drives faltered, including a first quarter field goal, a second quarter interception. Enoch, who played well, Landon had some struggles on the pass blocking side. The third down and red zone execution is the story on offense for us. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Will Rogers was never comfortable. So you can only do so many slants. You can only do so many short yardage dump offs on offense that are going to keep your offensive line from impacting the game. And there's just not enough. They're too talented on defense.
Oh yeah. And you can't give up 266 yards on the ground.
No, you can't. 7 yards to carry. Bruner, obviously, I mean, absolute dog. Like you said last week, legend. House had a great game, but we only had 4 pressures on their quarterback. You're not going to win games doing that. Voitanufi, he had a solid game probably on the defensive line, probably the most solid all around him and Valdez. You need them to continue to as we go into UCLA, you have to keep that up. Obviously, you have to have performances from them because UCLA is going to try to run the ball and control the clock and keep their quarterback from Garbers from throwing picks. So
the other thing is you have to tackle, man.
yeah.
I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, we said it. Tyler Warren, big 4.4 is a stud. But if you get him on the ground 2 or 3 or 4 times in that game, they're going 4th down and punting. And I get it. He's going to be probably like a top 30 type pick. I mean, he's a stud. If the Seahawks picked a guy like him, especially with our tight end room kind of the way it is right now, sign me up. But at the end of the day, dude, you got to tackle. And especially as we get into UCLA, dude, you'll hear me talk about this. They're going to get the ball out quick. You got to put the guys down in front of you and keep them in front of you and not let them get yak. And dude, we're not going to win games if we're giving up that many yards on the ground and if we can't tackle in football.
And you know what? What I was going to say is, let's be honest, guys. Across the board, this was a James Conn garbage can beating. They literally beat us up and down the field on all aspects. Me and my brother were rewatching the game today, and he was there in Happy Valley. Apparently, everybody in Happy Valley is actually really nice. Fans are very open.
Maybe that's where they're happy, brother.
Yeah, hey, it's what they said. Apparently, it was really dope. But the facts of the matter is, they just didn't look prepared. They got beat up and down the field, and there's some major questions before we move to UCLA that are being asked amongst Husky Nation, and I think the biggest one that we're staring right now from Husky Nation is the DeMond Will Rogers one. And I think that it's important that on Dubbed Up, we definitely are all pro dogs. So knowing how we feel about this is something that the watchers really want to know. So you guys, there's a whole, when we were watching that game and we watched DeMond come in, there was definitely a little spark. We went and had 2 scoring drives with him. They got stalled, but we moved a lot better, and his mobility was literally the factor in that. As we go forward, I know Will's supposed to be starting this weekend against UCLA. At least that's what it said in the depth chart that came out. How are you guys feeling moving forward? I mean, we were texting about it in the thread as the game was going on. Izzo, I'm really curious what you have to say on this.
My thoughts on this is that it's dependent upon who you're playing. Like, I don't know about giving him the entire game, just because I don't think you go into a game expecting that your offensive line is playing that poorly. Mm-hmm. But against UCLA, as an example, their defensive front is decent, but it's not the same opponent to where you're like, let's change quarterbacks right now. So I agree with Jed saying in his presser that he's sticking with him. Obviously, it seems like they're going to have a little bit, more of a leash, like they're going to be more quick to yank him. But regardless if DeMond had started this game or not, I don't think it would have changed the outcome. I also believe that it's not necessarily, like we talked about, good reps. Like these aren't necessarily good reps. Do you guys believe that DeMond offers you against UCLA a better chance of winning than Will Rogers does?
I mean, I think the game is probably a little more exciting in the sense of like, you just don't know what you're going to get every time DeMond touches the ball. But from an overarching kind of the history of what we've seen with Will Rogers and that senior level quarterback has, I don't even know, 60 games under his belt. Unfortunately, in a game like this that is a must win to kind of get to a bowl game, I'm going with Will Rogers. I'm going with the veteran.
Yeah, like it's like a trade-off for what he does against not at like elite level defensive lines that we just played against at home versus a spark.
Yeah,
for a game that you gotta win.
We know what we're getting with Will Rogers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think we're 11 games, 10 games into the season, about to be in 11 games into the season. If you can't keep him clean, it's going to be a long night. And I think, to be real, I actually think that's what Brennan Carroll and Jetfish saw. They're like, we're not stopping this defensive line. And so we have to have a player that can use his legs to literally run for his life to make plays. That's how good, in my opinion, that defensive line was, especially at home, wide out, 108,000 people. It's a different environment, and those boys just get up and go. And I think that's why they made the change. But at home on Montlake, Will's 5-0. I think you got to stick with Will.
Agreed.
What if we have Solo?
Sorry, just one more. You're going to tank his draft stock if you yank him too. And at this juncture in the season, it's the trade-off of what happens as a consequence of you full force going to Demond versus keeping Will Rogers in is just not worth it, especially when the statistics would show you kind of have a better chance of winning with Will. At least what's been proven so far at home.
I mean, Will's nothing better than. I mean, I don't mean this in a bad way. I'm just talking like how you project. I mean, what do you see him as? I mean, I'm thinking like he's 7th round.
Yeah, but
undrafted free agent type kid, anyways.
You get him 0 chance if you pull him, in my opinion.
I'm of the opinion that I don't know if he has much of a chance in the league at all. I think maybe he's an XFL guy, something like that, maybe Canadian football. But
I think Will Rogers might be like, honestly, Mike, like your prototypical like clipboard Jesus, bro. I'm serious. Like I think he's like that leader, that like very smart football player who you look back in 2035 and you go, dude, Will Rogers been in the league for 10 years. I mean, he kind of got like that Jake Browning vibe.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah. But to your point, Mike, dude, he's not going to blow you away with his arm. I just think he's one of those guys that like gets into a system, knows the system so well, and is such a like kind of like a studier. He can second string practice reps. He's showing the defense, what does it look like to be this is what a quarterback looks like on the other side. I think that's how he makes his hay in the NFL, in my opinion.
I the one thing I worry about, if Tafai is starting, which I don't know if that's happening. Have we got any updates on Tafai?
No.
Did I miss something on Tafai? Like, did he get hurt or?
He got hurt at the end of the Penn State game. He was out and Fa Solo was in.
Got it. I know. I'm sorry. Are you actually saying he got hurt or he just got pulled?
He got hurt. Like they had to carry him off the field.
Okay.
And then I haven't heard anything since. And if Fa Solo is starting, I don't want Will Rogers starting. I don't think they have 17 sacks, UCLA does, and I worry about us not winning the 6th game and getting to a bowl game, because I think getting to a bowl game is very, very imperative.
What about the scenario in which you see how it goes with Will Rogers and there's just a shorter leash on him?
I'm with that too. I think that's definitely doable. I
think that's what the case is.
Yeah. Like it was. Do you think maybe give him a whole half like they did in Penn State?
Oh, I think the leash might be shorter than that. Yeah,
like he throws a pick and they might.
Like if they're getting a ton of pressure, regardless of outcome, like regardless of the outcome of the drive, you could assume that if they're getting a ton of pressure, that they're probably not driving down the field and Will Rogers is scoring a touchdown or setting up a field goal. So I think they would probably gauge on the first couple drives. I mean, That's what I would do. And that's what it seems like he didn't totally hand, but he's like, I want to withhold some information for competitive advantage against UCLA to like not share where the leash is,
I still think there's this possibility that we see Will Rogers versus UCLA and we bring out Damon Williams versus Oregon.
There's a chance.
Yeah. I really do think that there's this like, especially if we're 6-5, we're going to go in there as no joke, 20 and a half, 24 and a half. I mean, something crazy point underdogs. And it's just like, I think you go, let's see what this kid's got. I mean, I really do. Like,
showcase him to recruits and show what you got for the future.
Yep.
Point there.
That's big. That's super big. Anybody on the defensive side of the ball? I know there's not a lot of highlights from the defense that made us feel great, but is there anybody that stuck out? I mean, I got to say Carson Bruner was all over the place, and the fact that he just lays it all out on the line every game makes me love him as a dog. But there wasn't a lot of other highlights defensively. We got beat pretty bad.
Man, the thing is, I know I'm kind of I'm kind of calling some dudes out, and you guys hear me say how much I love Deshaun Lynch. I know he ended up with 5 tackles on the game, but man, there were so many opportunities in that game. That's why, that's what my notes say, it's like, you got to take advantage of your opportunities early in that game. You see them run just like a little toss, like a toss crack or a quick toss, but there's no crack. Like they're just kind of reading the defensive end and the guy just runs right around Deshaun Lynch. And you're just like, I tweeted this out during the game last week. It's like defensive edges, defensive linemen on the edge, whatever you want to call yourself. Keep your outside shoulder free. I mean, it is simple effing football, excuse me, but like it is, man. It's just simple football. And it's like, that is just so frustrating week in and week out that, I'm sorry, Penn State on the road, you can't not make those types of plays, or at least bounce him out, bounce him to a negative play, and here comes the cavalry, with you. It's just you give them free runs at the edge, dude. You're not going to beat anybody, man.
That's
That pisses me off. It's just you're not beating anybody with that type of discipline.
And let's
I-
just
I-
get a big game. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
If we're gonna call positives, it's like who graded it out well. Boy was like okay across the board. Valdez was as well. Kamori House had a decent game. That's about it, dude.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys ready to flush this one? It's
Let's
been we got good at flushing things this year.
Yeah.
All right, let's look forward to this big game against UCLA. And the reason that it's a big game is, that's 6 wins, that's bowl eligibility, that's more practice time, and that's time to show off to recruits what they're going to get when they come here to UW. And also, I mean, in the ebb and flows of a season, when you get to that final game and get to a bowl game, regardless of the bowl, for me, it still feels big. It always feels like it is a culmination of the season, and it's what sends you into the offseason on a positive note or a negative note. And I think as we look forward to UCLA is coming off a big win at Iowa. I mean, Iowa came to UCLA, but they beat Iowa pretty handily. How are you guys feeling about this game? It doesn't seem like such a easy win like it felt before. Noah, kick this one off.
Yeah. First off, it's senior night. There's 26 seniors. And I mean, dude, there's nothing more that I would want is be able to send these guys to one last bowl game, man. I think they're going to know that. And I think Jed will have these guys ready to go on Friday night. Montlake on a Friday night, I think it's a blackout. And I think we were talking right before we kicked this off. Yeah.
The Warcraft blackout.
Yeah, World of Warcraft blackout. I mean, the crowd should probably be dialed in, And I actually kind of like this spot for the Dogs. And I'll tell you why. They're fighting for their bowl life, but also, UCLA has to play next week is USC. So are they kind of looking ahead against their rivals? They got to come up to Montlake, And here's the deal. The weather ain't going to be nice. It ain't going to be pretty. It's going to be a little windy, a little blustery. And just like I said with these USC boys, they don't like that weather. And I don't think the UCLA ones do either, man. So does the weather play a little factor there? And UW has an opportunity to go for their 20th win at home and go 6-0 on the season. I mean, it's a weird year, man. I don't remember a lot where you go 6-0 at home and 6-6, 6-0-6 on the road or something. There's obviously that possibility, but
those are things to play for, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are really things to play for.
UCLA is coming up. They played on Friday, so they got an extra day. I think, to Noah's point, I think it's less likely that they're looking past UW because they're also fighting for bowl eligibility. But I do think that I do hope that it's dumping. I hope it's raining. I hope it's miserable for them, and we're a little bit more.
It's 48 and rainy and windy.
Let's go. So
yeah, they don't. Them LA boys don't like that.
Yeah. And we're joking about it, but it plays a huge factor for the schools in Southern California. So look, UCLA is on an upward trend. They look better than they did at the beginning of the season. And, like Mike pointed out before that we started recording, a lot of that had to do with their schedule, but they took care of some teams that UW did not. Iowa and Rutgers, obviously, are the recent two. Now, I do think that despite UW having kind of short yardage per play stuff, like kind of having to sacrifice the deep shot and play within, the capabilities of their offensive line, UCLA is now without some serious holes. And that has to do with some injuries too. And that's on both sides of the ball. So both in the secondary and at receiver. But, it's not that they don't have Quasi Gilmer's good, Moya's good, but, I think that this is a game where you're at home. And if you're playing up, to me, that means that you're playing a little bit more physical, especially on defense. And in the secondary, that's what I want to see. I want to see us come up and bruise some guys. So we'll get into it. This should be a good game. This should be a close game. But yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. And that was one of the things before we clocked on that I was talking about is that the schedule that UCLA played this year was ridiculously tough. We're talking Indiana. We're talking Penn State. We're talking
at
Iowa,
LSU.
At LSU. They had
Penn
a lot of real tough games early in the season, and that would kind of contribute to this 3-5 record or a 4-5 record that they have right now. Let's take a look at the offense. The offense led by Ethan Garbers, former Dog.
Welcome back to Montlake.
He's got 12 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. In the games they've won, he's been dynamic, thrown for lots of yards and touchdowns, but he's also thrown a whole bunch of picks, and he's been sacked even more than Will Rogers. He's been sacked 20 times this year. As we're looking at this USC offense, what do we see there that's really good? Because their power running against Iowa was crazy last week. But what do we see that is going to be the holes in what the Dogs can exploit? Izzo, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, on the offensive line, they got some guys who are questionable, obviously, with all those sacks. Sam Yoon, their center, Garrett DiGiorgio are two examples. This would be a big game for Voy. This is a big game for Carson. Those are the guys that you're going to look, especially Voy, because he plays this role where he's, in on pass defense and on, run defense. Those are the areas you can exploit. I know, Noah, you've talked about ad nauseum just throughout the year, the different stunts, the different, blitz packages. Get out of the bag, like do everything that you need to do to get pressure on Ethan Garbers, because he's susceptible to that. They're going to try to run the rock just like every other team that we've played on the outside, and we have to keep contained. So none of this matters if, like Noah talked about, guys on the edge can't keep their outside shoulder free and keep contained on running backs. I am curious to see if we kind of play closer to the line and just say, hey, let Quasi and let those other guys try to beat us over the top a little bit more in this game. Just because I think this is a team where the talent differential, if there really is any, I would almost suggest that UW is pretty outside of the line of scrimmage, far ahead, in terms of talent-wise at the skill positions. And I think that this is a game where you really want to control that.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this UCLA offense, I mean, Ethan Garbers, man, he is Jekyll and Hyde. And I say that because when he stays clean, I mean, he is 74% completion, 1,300 yards, and a 10-2 pick ratio, touchdown to pick ratio. But when pressured, it drops to 45%, and he's thrown 2 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. I mean, he's Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, when he's on time, on target, I mean, he's a tough quarterback, and no wonder UW kind of, recruited him to come to Montlake. But a lot of that success, like we're seeing, it relies on how clean they keep him, like Izzo's saying. And this O-line has been shaky in like 5 different games on the year. They've graded out less than 55 overall on PFF. And I think Bieniemy is really starting to like realize that. And I think what you're seeing is getting the ball out, kind of taking a little bit of Jet Fish-esque approach and getting that ball out quick. I think Garbers ended up with 209 passing yards, and 120 of those came off of yak. 60% of those passing yards were, yards after completion. So I just think that you're really starting to see, hey, we can't be successful keeping him clean for 3 or 4 seconds. Let's get the ball out quick. And then finally, it's kind of just an interesting stat. Do you know that this past game for UCLA versus Iowa was the first time all year they had not only a 100-yard rusher, but a rusher over 60 yards? And so it's kind of are they starting to kind of come out of that early season funk? Sure. I think that them coming to Montlake I'm not sure that actually keeps them, right where they want to be with the crowd and kind of just the voodoo that I think we kind of have up on Montlake.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And that makes sense. And, one of the things that you notice, because I think they've won their last 3 in a row. In those games, they've been way more balanced when it comes to run to pass. In the games that they lose, they seem to be the opposite.
I think that has to do with them keeping the ball out of Garber's hands too much. I also am curious about how much pressure Iowa was bringing and those other teams are bringing. And I wonder, at least from the clips that I can remember from rewatching their game, was Burkett getting the one that sticks out in my head is Burkett getting pressure on Garbers in the first quarter, and they were rushing 4.
Yep.
Wonder if that's kind of like, if you play back on them, they're going to be more willing to hand the rock off. And if you don't jump out early on UCLA, they're going to be more comfortable being balanced. And they have 2 decent running backs in Harden and Berger. So I don't know. There's a lot of football math here that I think, like Noah said, it's kind of the easy way out a little bit, but it's some of the elements in the crowd like definitely play to the disadvantage of Garbers and this offensive line, because they've been they've been better in the last three weeks, but they're inconsistent. And I think if you bring pressure, you can really disrupt that. Even in the run too.
Okay. So if we're looking at our defense, who needs to have a big game to ensure this? Because, like I said, it's a big time game, and we need the win to become bowl eligible. Noah, keep this one off.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about like this offensive line. I mean, this isn't a small offensive line. I mean, they're actually pretty they're pretty big up front. I just don't know how much, like, if you just want to sit there and bull rush them all day, I think they can kind of stalemate you. But I think if you can bring some pressures, with some stunts up front, I think you have a real opportunity to get to Garbers. And the thing with Garbers and this offense, I think, as you see, is if you can keep them behind the sticks and create negative plays, I think they really struggle. So I think that's where you'll see Stevie B really dial up interesting pressures. And we talk about that a lot, but I, a lot of times it's tough to get home. But I think this team kind of allows it with just the way their offense plays. And I said this earlier, I'll say it again. Dude, you got to tackle, and keep things in front of you against this team.
I think the player for me is Tupatala, because I think you rely on him a ton to bring pressure. And if I remember correctly, we're getting Durfee back for this game. Is that right? I think Jed said that. I can't remember.
Yeah,
I hope so.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because I think we've thought that for the last like 2 to 3 weeks, and then we didn't think it. And I mean, if we get him back, I mean, that'd be amazing, man.
I'm pretty sure he said that we were, but I'll have to go back and double check. But regardless, like, this game for us on defense is going to depend upon edge play and containing the outside run, because now the groundwork is laid. Here is how you beat Washington. USC did it, and they should have done it way earlier, and giving the ball to Woody Marks a ton. And then last week, obviously, we got truck sticked on the outside. So there's the path. Therefore, the players who are most important in this game play on the outside.
Dude, TJ Harden, like their running back too, he loves getting that like inside zone and then bouncing it outside a ton too. So I think that's a great call, Izzo. Because I think if you can get a guy like Durfee back to help set that edge better, I think it is, I don't know, it's just an opportunity for us to play disciplined football, something I think we've really struggled with all year.
Yeah, it sucks how much, we've relied upon the linebackers to save the edges this year, because that's truthfully what it seemed like we look at most weeks, at least the last like 4 or 5 weeks since Durfee's been out.
Yep, that's real. And we need the pressure, but also because they pass so much, I think we also need to look at Thad Dixon and Prysock need to have big games in the secondary, because if they get behind the sticks, they're going to throw the ball 35 times easy in the game.
Sure, absolutely.
All right. So anything else you guys want to hit on about the offense for UCLA and the defense for UW, or should we move on to the opposite side of the ball?
I would love to see this defense play some complimentary football, man. Dude, just like create some turnovers and give our offense some confidence, man. I mean, I think
we definitely, not to interrupt you, we absolutely turnovers. Like, that's a must.
Yep. That's when they struggle the most, when he's having to throw the ball and he's throwing picks. And if you look at what's consistent about all their losses, lots and lots of turnovers and not running the ball. I got a question for you guys. Have you ever wanted to walk into Husky Stadium where there's 70,000 people and be the best looking person in the stadium? If you have, make sure you go to Simply Seattle, hit that QR code. Our good friends at Simply Seattle hooked us up and we look great. You see that QR code? Make sure you snap that, go check it out. Get all the Husky gear you want, plus Mariners, Sonics, Storm, all that stuff, everything at Simply Seattle.
While you're at it, be sure to check out the Dub Discord community with over 2,700 members. It's the largest organized chat room for all things Washington Husky athletics. You want insider access? Our VIP membership unlocks exclusive chat rooms and rumors you won't find anywhere else. Hit the QR code on the screen and join the conversation today. Go Dogs. Thank you for everything.
Now let's flip as we look at Washington's offense, which struggled so bad against Penn State, and UCLA's defense, which seemed to do really well against Iowa in that running game. What do we see? What do we have to do going into this game? Because I know we got to get Jonah Coleman going and we got to get the passing game going. But what do you think is most important to really dominating UCLA and getting them behind the sticks early? Izzo, I'm gonna have you kick off this one.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know what it's been all year at the highest level. It's been converting in the red zone and just play calling in general, I will say. And so to me, this is less of like a chess match of trying, this whole year we've kind of been like, all right, who are their weaknesses? Who are our strengths? Let's go to them. And in the games where we win, those chess pieces have played out. In the games where we have lost, and I understand that this is kind of a cop out, but it is what it is. We've gotten too cute in the red zone. We've decided to kind of steer away from getting creative by going sideline to sideline, and we're too focused about moving the ball upfield because we kind of seem desperate at times. There's some players in their secondary that are gettable. We have a clear advantage, I think, in an NFL wide receiver of the future, which is Denzel Boston. Use him. Not on just the slants, buy some time. If, like we had talked about earlier, that requires you to pull out Will Rogers to let him get open so that Damon can bounce outside because you're not holding contain in the pocket, then do so. Do the thing, make the adjustments and do the things where you notice it early on and you're reactive right away and you execute on that game plan. So prepare for it this week. And that's how I think we can win this game on the offensive side of the football, because that's going to be how you convert in the red zone. We have no problem against teams of equal or lesser talent moving the football between the 20s. It is when we get in the red zone that we fluster. So flush that last game as a barometer of how this game will go, because it's a completely different defense. It's not even on the same wavelength as what Penn State, shows you. So, maybe there's a little bit of frustration coming through here, but we've talked about it a lot. We know what our strengths on offense are, and I want to see them utilized. I want to see Giles Jackson get the end arounds. I want to see Keith Reynolds expose speed, advantages, dump offs to Jonah Coleman more regularly, feed him the rock, like all the things we've talked about all year.
Yep. And but a 5-5 season will precipitate frustrations.
It will.
Noah, what do you think?
Playing off a natty run.
Yeah, I mean, coming off a natty run, man, it's tough when you struggle like this, for sure. I think your point's valid. When I look at this defense, man, I mean, dude, top 15 run defense in the country, and which I think might even be more impressive than their ranking, is how bad their offense has been, and just the amount of time their defense is on the field, and they still have a very good, run defense. I mean, dude, there's no question, man. When you look at their linebackers, they're big, man, and they're prototypical downhill linebackers. They got that Colin, I think Schlesinger got kid, and I mean, it also helps that they got those two big old hog mollies up front, and Talpaki, number 92, and Toy, 93. I mean, they'll hit you in the mouth, and they're tough up front. But I think kind of how Washington exposes that is get this defensive line and running backs running side to side with some quick hitters. And I know that we talk about this all too often, and we talk a lot about, hey, what does it look like to throw our slants? It looks pretty darn good because we do it so often. But dude, how about the quick bubble screens? And you don't even have to run a screen. How about just the quick hitters? Let those guys, move and go. I mean, and then as they start to bring those safeties up, dude, this defense, you can hit them over the top. And so I think that's kind of the recipe for success. Get those guys to start coming forward because you're getting the ball out quick and early. And then once you can hit them over the top, that's when you can bring in Damon Williams and Jonah, and maybe we see some of that future 2025 type season with some RPO flair. That's kind of the way if I was the offensive coordinator for the day, and that's kind of the recipe I would use to beat this defense.
Ain't freaking men to that.
Yeah.
Sounds simple as that.
It sounds solid to me. The team is so up and down this year that it's hard to put your finger on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is it going to be this week? All right. You guys have anything else you want to add to about this to break down this offense and defense?
No. I mean, that's it. That's it.
Yep.
We could spend 15 minutes going chess piece for chess piece, but we know what it is. Like Noah said, we've been calling for this all season. That's what Noah just said is what we've been saying for 6 weeks or longer, really.
Yeah.
Like,
dude, is a really quick, not to cut you off, but there's a reason that UW is top 35 or whatever it is with yards per game or yards per play. I think we're like 6.5 yards per play, but then we struggle in the red zone and we're like in the hundreds or 110s in scoring per game. those things usually don't like you usually don't have a team that has top 35-ish offense yards per play, but then we're like 100, 110 on scoring per game. Like those don't vibe. And so it comes down to one simple word, and that's execution. You have to be able to execute on the offensive side and defensive side of the ball to win. And if UW can't do that, we're going to go into the season. We'll be 5-7, and we'll be looking back on this and going, "Man, that year sucked." But if you can execute for a game, give yourself an opportunity to play for a bowl game, and go 6-6, maybe sneak one out against Oregon, go 7-5. It's like the whole year completely can flip on its head, and you can say we lost 40 something guys off the team, 13 guys went to the draft. And you can look for the positives of the season, but you have to be able to put a full game of complementary football together to do that. And that's what's going to take to beat UCLA.
I just think back to when we were breaking down Coach Koo's film of Arizona last year on offense and how excited we were and how confident we were at watching a bunch of different play calls that were executed where they were getting the ball out super fast. Yeah. And there was a couple guys open on each play. They were executing a game plan. And I'm sorry, but like it's been so many weeks now to where my willingness to give a leash to the play calling is it's almost short at this point. Yeah. It's just because I know that they're capable. I know that the staff is capable of making the play calls, and you have 3 capable running backs, Jeremiah Hunter and Denzel as big body, deep shot or just over the middle type of guys. And you have Giles Jackson and Keith Reynolds creating mismatches with speed going sideline to sideline with one of the best running backs in the country as your starter too. And it's just it's frustrating. And I'm trying not to let Penn State's defense, which is very good at their house, dictate my feelings. But now it's not just that; it's the compilation of how many weeks in a row. And shout out to KP. I know he was going off about the slants or whatever it was. I don't even think it was necessarily about that, but the play calling in general. And he's right, man. I mean, we got to make some changes here because
hold it together, KP. Good Lord.
We're like spat. KP and I know each other upstairs or whatever, but I just see it as like we both want the same thing. We all want the same thing, and we're all frustrated with the same thing. So when you're looking at the offense.
Well, and after 10 games, we are who we are. Like the mistakes and those things are part of who this team was as we move forward and look back on 2025 or 2024 as a season. And that's what's going to have to change going into next year. But we can, like you said, make it better and make it a little bit more sweet and less medicine by beating UCLA and then maybe going and surprising Oregon. But if not, having a chance to play for that 7th win in the bowl game and ending on a positive note moving into next year and something to sell to the players coming in. So as we move forward, let's look at our predictions for this game. Who wants to kick off the predictions?
Izzo, you kick it off this week.
All right, Izzo, let's do it.
I've got UW winning this game 24-20, and it having to do mostly because of the elements in the crowd. I do see UCLA scoring, basically solely off of them hitting the outside. I don't think we're going to be able to contain the outside entirely. That changes drastically if Durfee plays. I do think he provides an element in that rotation that allows you to contain a little bit better. No, I don't think he's perfect at it. I think he's still a young defensive end, in comparison to the amount of games he's played versus counterparts in the league. But I still think he provides an element that would allow you to make this more of like a 27-13 type of win. If anything's been proven in the Big Ten, it's that road games in the Big Ten there's a massive differential unless you are a top tier team. Even then you go, you're Ohio State and you lose in Eugene or whatever it is. I just think where I was skeptical of that heading into this season, I think it's playing a huge factor, especially as we get down into the end of the season. Guys are tired, guys are hurt. UCLA's list of injuries is like 15 players long. And I think some of that spills over to us too, but I actually do think we have less injuries than them. So I got UW for all the reasons we listed. I think even if you don't have a perfect offensive game plan, you can still win this game. And I got us winning 24-20.
Okay. All right, Noah.
Yeah. When you really look at this game and kind of look as the season's progressed, our records aren't identical, but I think our teams mirror each other a lot more than, people really realize. Kind of struggle. Our offensive lines are a little, struggling. We're kind of beat up on the, defensive line. I just think Montlake Friday night, World of Warcraft, the blackout. I just think that's too much, man. I think that their secondary is really like the weak, maybe the weakest spot of all of the both teams. And I think UW can expose that if we can just keep Will Rogers upright. And then I think, like I said, kind of bringing in Damon again in like those spot RPO flashes with Jonah. I think that'll just be too much. I like UW. I think Stevie B pulls out some voodoo. 24-17 UW.
Okay. I like that. I think the weather is going to play a huge factor in this game. It's supposed to be rainy, windy. I think Jonah Coleman's going to have a huge day. I think this is going to be his biggest game of the season. And I see UW winning in the rain, like 28-13. I think it's going to be hard for Garbers to throw the ball in the rain and wind. The reason he got out of Seattle in the first place, not really. I'm just saying that. But those are my predictions. Before we get out of here, actually, Izzo, I know you're probably tired of addressing this, but I know that, man, it felt like I know we lost a big recruit, flip to Oregon this weekend, and there's talk of another one. Give us a quick little recruiting update because everybody is asking for it.
Yeah, I mean, so like for Ploog, I don't know if there's a ton to explain. I know people are kind of looking for explanations on it. All that I heard was that it would be a really big surprise if he did flip, because everything that he was saying to us was that he was staying. But this goes to show you with recruiting, like, you can get lied to, frankly. And I'm not calling him a liar, like, or saying like, oh, you shouldn't do that, yada, yada. Like, go get your money, because that, despite how much it doesn't, Duck fans might not want that to be a factor as to why, or maybe they do. That is a huge portion. I mean, to pretend that you can't just go and outbid anybody, frankly, pretty much in the country for a player, that is crazy. So
17-year-olds are going to change their mind. It just happens.
Yes, that has a factor. I think, he took a bunch of visits while he was committed to UW. There's another player who's done something similar, and I've heard something similar with nothing but positive things to say to us in terms of, hey, I'm staying. And I have reason to believe that is more legitimate with Zach Stauscausky than it does with Stauscausky than it does with Vander Ploog. But they put the pressure on. They needed the kid to commit right now. They had the money to do so. Oregon's on the up and up. All of those things considered, that's why you have a Vander Ploog flip to Oregon. The recruiting, you just...
What would you tell Husky Nation, and especially the guys that are melting down about this?
Okay, I will say this. Vander Ploog is extremely talented. We wanted him. We still do. I still would want him. He's younger to his position. So I'm just going to say the brass facts of it all. Unbelievable athlete, is going to be good. It's just, you have to consider how much of an impact that player has to your class when you have the tight ends, the young tight ends that we do on the roster. You have the Baron Naoni. It's just not as massively impactful as it feels, because it's the Ducks who flip the recruit from you. Like, the class is still a tremendous class as class number one. Like, go look and compare, remove even Stauscausky from the class. If you look at class calculators or whatever, and compare that class to a Chris Peterson, to a Kalen DeBoer. And what you'll find is that it's a much more complete class than either of their first one. So
you're telling Husky Nation, step back from the edge. We're going to be okay.
Tight end, man. It's a tight end.
Appreciate it. And if you guys want to get into any of these conversations, make sure you go and join the Discord. The QR code is right down below there. Snap it. It's free to join. 2,700 strong. All the best information. 2,800. My bad. 28. I was wrong. No one knows what he's talking about. All right. For my guys, Izzo and Noah, I'm Mike Blunt, and this is the Dubbed Up Podcast. Let's get a win, fellas. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Get this one. Get bowl eligible, boys. Show out for the seniors.
We
Go
really
Dogs.
Whew. Whew. Hey, I like those